Hello again. Things just keep getting weirder and weirder. It's going to get so much weirder. Like, really fast, too. Um, Most people will not be able to accept what's going on around them. You'll see a lot of people losing their minds. I'm not kidding about that. It's not a joke. It's not a. I mean, like, literally, people will not be able to assimilate the information that they're seeing and hearing into their matrix of reality. I don't know how else to say it. But, because I know that when the Lord first started making these things known to me, I totally felt like I was losing my mind. I had no one to talk to about it. That will be a different thing. Yeah, for most people, they'll have fellowship, whereas I had none. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I did talk to people about it, but for the most part, I just got strange looks and people rolled their eyes and, and the other thing was, the Christians that I spoke to about it just simply told me that I was deceived and that I was communicating with demons. And I'm like, demons don't tell you to read your word. They don't tell you to pray. They don't speak to you in scripture, although they can. And you will never feel at peace around demons either. Never. Never. You'll never feel peace or the joy of God. Never around them. You'll never feel that. 144 on the timer. I've been seeing that number a lot lately. I mean, I've been seeing it for the last couple of years, but I've been seeing it a lot, like in the last week. The things that the Lord has told me we will see are, like, even to me, I think that a lot of the things that people are seeing now, like the orbs and the, so-called drones, although that's not what they are, the Lord gave me a word about the Great Deception. And I think a lot of people are having like a cognitive dissonance with what they're seeing and believing that this is something spiritual. It is, absolutely is. These are not aliens from some other planet. That's not what's going on. There are very few, if any, entities that come here from other planets. That's just not how higher dimensional and multidimensional beings, like entities, work. They just don't. Like a lot of people I've heard, I've heard people say, why would an alien species that was so advanced travel so far? And that's absolutely right. They wouldn't, but they don't need to because they're not far from us. It doesn't work that way. When you're that advanced, time is not an issue. Like space-time, which is the same thing, by the way. Because in physics, when you start talking about, especially quantum physics, when you start talking about like multiverse and when you start talking about the multiverse, when you start talking about like time travel and things like that, it's not just traveling across time, you're traveling across space as well. It's space-time. It's the same thing. And I know that what I saw, a lot of people have speculated that there was some kind of like mothership that dropped off like probes, so to speak, or like foot soldiers kind of thing. They're not soldiers, but I mean, kind of. Like, this is a spiritual war. Of course, the world has always been under spiritual attack. We always have been. That's a running theme in human history. But like, we will see things with our eyes that, like, it's mind-blowing stuff. What was the other thing you wanted me to talk about, though? Like, to me, it seems normal because I've had a lot of time to have it be normal for me. The Lord's been working with me for a very long time, and I was alone with the Lord the whole time. I didn't have anyone but my dog. Like, there was no... And like I said, the few people that I did mention to, like, tried to speak with them about what was happening to me, they didn't believe me. They either didn't believe me, or they did and they didn't know what to say. They had experienced, like, similar things, but, like, not similar things, but, like, kind of out there things. And, but, you know, for whatever reason, they didn't want to accept that as reality. They just pushed it aside as a dream, or maybe they were, you know, tripping out, or, you know, under like emotional duress. And it's interesting because usually when we're under emotional duress and when we're in like physical stress and all these kind of different things, confirmation, that's when we are experiencing the heaviest spiritual warfare. That's what that is. When you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling scared, when you're feeling tired and worn out, or, you know, just like overwhelmed, that is spiritual warfare. I don't know really why most people don't marry the two, but that's exactly what it is. And the more stressed and the more overwhelmed and the more tired and everything else that you're feeling, the heavier the warfare is. There's so many things I've written down. There's so many things that I've talked about on this channel. Like, I know that the Lord took me to hell. Or it wasn't hell. It was Sheol. Took me to Sheol. I never in a million years imagined, because in the Bible it talks about hell being like a place of gnashing of teeth, wailing and gnashing of teeth. There will be much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Like, but it's so much worse than that. It's so much worse than that. There's actually a video on this channel, and I talk about, and it's hardcore. Like, be prepared. It's all kinds of gross. I couldn't, like, when that happened to me and I had all those visions about hell, and I can still see it very clearly, like what was, and I wouldn't call it hell, but this Sheol place, I mean, ugh. Excuse me. And the things that go on there are so horrifying. I mean, worse than any 10 horror films all put together. It's nothing human at all. I had a dream. It wasn't last night. It was the night before. And there were these... Now, the Lord's been talking to me about, like, cephalopods, which are squid, in other words, and octopi, and all these different, like, things under the ocean. And I said, Lord, why are you talking? Because I don't think I had ever even, like, I think I mean, I knew the word cephalopod, but I hadn't heard it, and I don't think I'd ever actually spoken it out loud. Like, I think I had read it, but I hadn't, like, ever said it out loud. And the other night, I am having this dream about this weird, it's really strange dream, where I was in a parking lot. Anyway, the point of the dream was that, like, what the Lord was showing me was that so many demonic creatures, demonic entities, for them, and I've heard one other person talk about it like this, for them, because of their technological advancement, they feed off of our energy. They're literally energy vampires. For them, destroying a human life in trauma and, excuse me. See, even talking about these things, like, I can feel them trying to attach to me. They can't, but I feel it. So I'll start coughing and burping and sneezing. It's weird. Because usually when you're receiving deliverance, you'll cough and burp and sneeze. And I know I don't have any attachments, but when things try to attach to me, you'll notice, like, and if they try to do it to you, You'll start sneezing. You'll start burping. You'll start farting. It's weird. I know that sounds strange, but it's just how it works. But so even when I talk about some of these things, like I'll start burping and coughing, and I try not to fart on camera, but usually the Lord doesn't let that happen, so I don't have to be embarrassed. But the things that go on in this place are so horrifying. It's enough to, like, I made a video about it on this channel, and I think and it's not, I think I titled it, like, you know, do you want to know what goes on in hell? But it's not, it wasn't hell that I was in. But if you want to know, like, if you have some desire to know about that, because it does help you start to understand the extent of the witchcraft in our world. And I don't just mean, like, the witchcraft that humans perpetrate on other humans. I mean the witchcraft of, like, our government, movies, TV, school, everything, literally. And when you start to realize what's actually going on in this world, you can never see it. You can never unsee it, ever. Like, you just can't. Excuse me. But this dream was about these entities that were trying to feed off of me and trying to feed off of my dog. And they were trying to cause fear in me, which is exactly what demons do. They cause fear and then they feed off of that energy. But you have to understand how impersonal it is for most demons. Not all demons. Some of these demons are really sadistic, really horrifying, really, really bad. But not all of them. And I'm not saying that there are any good demons. Don't hear what I'm not saying, because that's not what I'm saying at all. They're all horrible. But some of them are so ancient. They're so ancient. They're so single-minded in their nature that for them it's all very impersonal. They're not looking to destroy anyone's life. They're not looking to hurt anyone. It's just that that's our food. That's their food. And we are their food, like our emotions are their food. So they will harvest energy off of us. And for some of them, it's really personal. Like they're very sadistic. They get off on, literally, it's gross. Really gross. They get off on making us destroy ourselves, destroy each other, create wars and, like, unnecessary wars and all kinds of things like that. Horrible, horrible stuff. But some of them are just, it's like a shark in the ocean. You know, I mean, they're just hungry. They're not looking for, like, you know, to like, I mean, unless you're watching the movie Jaws or something, they're not looking to, like, fulfill some revenge. There's no emotional drive in those creatures to destroy or harm anything. They simply are seeking their own survival. So, and I think it's for those of us who are discerning of spirits, who have discernment of spirits, you need to know which ones are doing what and why. Because when it's impersonal like that, it's a little bit easier to handle, I think. Like, the onslaught of the evil is easier to handle. But when when you're walking around, like, thinking that it's all very personal, it's because it's not. I think I've said this before, like, when we're harvesting, apples from an apple tree or something, we're not, like, attributing a personality to each apple and, oh, that apple has seeds inside of it and it could have baby apples one day. I mean, nobody thinks that way, right? Well, that's how they think. They're simply harvesting from us so that they can live. They are not looking to, they don't feel any particular way about what they're doing. And that's what this whole dream was about. Apparently, the Lord has been talking to me about cephalopods and octopi and things like that, because we need to understand that the things that we deal with in the abyss, like, are literally demonic. And I've been asking the Lord for a while how that works, because like, how is a squid demonic? And it's not the squid, it's not the physical squid, it's the spirit that attaches itself to it. It's because that when, pre-diluvian flood, we had giants roaming the earth. Well, once the flood hit the earth, once the Lord released the flood, we, not we as in humans, but there was all the giants were killed, which were the children of the fallen angels. Now, the Lord has been telling me that we will see giants again. He's told me also that the fallen have been unchained. Because I've had numerous experiences with things that are evil, but they're not demonic. Because a demon is entirely horrible. There is nothing good about it. But these entities that were coming to me were not entirely terrible. Now, were they evil in nature? Yes, very much. But they weren't demonic in the sense that when you come up against a demon, there's nothing positive about them. There's no positive aspect to them at all. None at all. Not even a little bit. But like, for instance, there was a entity that came to me in the Santa Fe National Forest, and she called herself Venus. And I thought, really? This is weird. Okay. And she was talking to me. And I wasn't having a conversation with her, but I was listening to what she was saying. So that I could understand what was going on. Not that I have conversations with them. But I wasn't really so much listening to what she was, like the words she was using, but the emotion, like the feeling behind it. And I felt this heightened sense of creativity, this feeling of like being really pretty, like very pretty, like, which was kind of odd for me. And then also disgust at flies. Like, I was disgusted by flies. I don't like flies very much anyway, but like, this was irrational disgust at flies. Like, I remember a fly got into my car and I nearly screamed at it. It was weird. And then, but there was this, so there were like positive aspects to it, is what I'm saying. The heightened creativity was like a very positive aspect to this entity that I was experiencing, and the prettiness, the feeling of like being pretty and looking in the mirror and liking what I see and all that kind of thing. But there was also like a heightened sense of like dissatisfaction with life, which was weird because I don't feel that way. That's not my energy. And anyway, through this experience with this entity, I was able to discern that this was not demonic, because I've run up against some like really demonic stuff in my life, and this had positive aspects to the entity, but it definitely wasn't of God. There's no doubt about that. But it wasn't entirely demonic either. So then I began to ask the Lord, what's up with that? Because the fallen are different than the demons, the Nephilim, their children. Demons are just entirely horrible. They're just horrible creatures. Very entitled, parasitic, evil through and through. Nothing positive to them at all. But the fallen taught humanity all kinds of things that in a lot of ways were beneficial to us, and propagated our survival on this planet. Now, they taught us a lot of horrible things too, but they're different. They're so different in that aspect. Like, they have positive aspects to them, whereas demons are just entirely horrible. And that's what I saw when I was in Sheol. And I don't mean I was physically there. I was taken in the spirit. But my spirit body was there. And the things they had done to my spirit body. And not only that, but I saw millions, if not billions, of women, men, women, children, animals. The forest was sick. In the particular place that I saw, I was in a deep forest. Like a deep, like dark, creepy forest. And I saw some people I knew too. Like, if people really understood, if they really understood, and I mean even people who don't walk with Christ, if they really understood how horrible these creatures are, I doubt that anyone who is the least bit sane would have anything to do with them. It's that bad. It's like almost beyond human comprehension how horrible they are. Yuck. And I had dreams about this, like waking dreams. I had like open visions, like I was seeing these things with my eyes open. And I've had a couple dreams about it too, like I was asleep dreaming about this place. And so many of us are still chained there. So many of us. So many of us. So many Christians too. And I know that most people will say, you know, if you're Christian, you cannot be possessed. If you're, you know, you can have attachments, but you cannot. I mean, if that's what, I mean, Father, I don't even know what to say to that. If you open the door, you can, because I was saved when I was 6 years old, and I definitely had demons in me. Like, I was possessed, literally. Excuse me. See, even talking about these things, it's not what a Christian wants to hear. I know that. I know that's not what a Christian wants to hear. The attachments can be so deep that it moves into possession. They can be so all-encompassing, and when we're confirmation, and when we open the spiritual door for these things, the legal spirit, when we give them a legal spiritual foothold to come in to our lives, they become more than attachments, which is, in fact, the next step is possession. I know because I've experienced it myself, and I've seen it on other people. I've seen it happen to other people who have been Christians their whole lives. You cannot lose your salvation. If you call on the name of the Lord, you will receive deliverance. You will be saved from it. No doubt about that. No one can take you, like nothing, and no one can ever separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. No one and nothing, ever. Ever. Nothing. No angel, no power, no principality, nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. But we really need to start taking these things more seriously. The spiritual war that we've been under for all of human history, but especially right now, the things that are coming, the things that are already here, that may not be in your neck of the woods yet, but they're here. And they're not going anywhere anytime soon. The spiritual war that we are up against now, we could never see these things before. We didn't see them with our eyes. We didn't, you know, people would perceive of them, but, you know, feeling an overwhelming sense of joy around angels, or feeling an overwhelming sense of dread around demons. But people are not ready for this. Most people are not ready at all. Not at all. And even when you think you're ready, I mean, even as experienced as I am in these realms, I know that it's going to be mind-blowing for me too. And all I can really do is pray for people. I mean, I could, you know, wave my hands and yell and scream and shout from the rooftops, you know, you need to be saved and you need to seek the Lord. And if you're not awake now, there's a reason why you're not. Like, even talking about these things makes me uncomfortable. Like, I just don't like it. I've had a couple dreams about demons in the last couple nights, in the last like 5 nights or so. Like, things coming to me, trying to mess with me and things like that. And I have zero tolerance for it, none at all. But at the same time, it doesn't bother me. It's not really more than just like an annoyance to me at this point. But at the same time, it's just altogether nasty. It's not something you want to deal with. But being Christian doesn't mean that we are immune to the attacks, like at all. In fact, the closer you are to the Lord, the more you get attacked. Which might make it sound like it's easier to stay away from the Lord. That's not the case either. Because if you're not walking in the power, authority, and dominion that Christ gives you, you have no chance. You literally have no chance. I don't care. It's not that I personally don't care. These demons, them, they don't care. They have no respect for human life. None at all. They don't care about your children. They don't care about your family. They don't care about your job. They don't care about you. They don't care about your health. None of it. And like harvesting apples off of a tree, for humans, they simply view us as food. Now, they don't like literally eat our flesh. They do worse things than that to us. One of the main ways that they attach to us is through trauma. Any unhealed trauma that you have in your life, if your parents got divorced, your wife or your husband left you in some horrible way, you were abused as a child, any of these, all kinds of things. Maybe you were bullied when you were a kid. Maybe you're still getting bullied. All of these things are trauma responses, and these things feed off of trauma. Other than keeping your eyes on the Lord, the best thing that you could do is start healing your traumas, especially childhood trauma, because they love childhood trauma. It's really gross. But that's what they love. They feed off of it. And what I mean by healing your childhood trauma is like praying for the Lord to guide you, of course. But what I'm talking about is reprogramming your central nervous system to stop having those trauma responses. Because I know that, like, for complex PTSD, it's very similar to somebody who's been through war. Somebody who's been through, like, physical war. They smell things that either aren't there, or they still smell the smell of war. They smell the smell of death. It's similar, and it triggers something in them, and that's encoded in it's programmed into your central nervous system, so that you have that response every time you get in a similar situation. Complex PTSD works the same way. So when someone gives you like a disapproving look, or uses a particular tone of voice with you, you revert back to that trauma response. Maybe your mother talked to you that way. Maybe your father talked to you that way. Maybe you had a teacher in school, confirmation. That's like, somebody needs to hear this right now. I don't know who it is. But maybe you had a teacher in school, or kids in school, or whoever it was that treated you a certain way. This goes back to that response, and that is called a trigger. So when we don't take the time to reprogram our central nervous system, it runs away wild, and it does its own thing. And so that PTSD, because you can have both PTSD and complex PTSD. Complex PTSD tends more to root itself in an emotional trauma, and PTSD tends to be more physical, but you can have both. And they do go hand in hand to some extent or other. But most people, what I see most people dealing with, I guess I'll leave that open. What I see most people dealing with, so prevalent, is the complex PTSD, where it's an emotional response that gets triggered in people. And so then, they'll see that look in somebody's eyes, or hear that tone of voice in somebody, in the way someone talks, or maybe even like particular words that trigger people. or maybe like a series of events. Like complex PTSD could be as simple as being late. Like, okay, so I'll give an example. When I was a kid, my mom, like, we always had a hard time getting to school on time. And the later we were, the more my mom screamed on the way to school. She'd give us rides to school in the morning. And God bless her heart, I know she was doing her best, but she would scream at us in the car, like, the whole way to school. And so I grew this trauma response, this complex PTSD response, where anytime anybody raised their voice to me, I'd feel that, like, tightness in my chest, and like that feeling of, like I need to run, like I need to escape. And also if I felt like somebody getting upset around me, things like that. And it wasn't until the Lord taught me how to heal my body and my mind from those responses through breath work, through meditation, through physical exercise. And I can be around somebody who raises their voice to me now. Like someone just yelled at me recently. Like, it wasn't yelling exactly, but raising their voice to me. And it wasn't until that happened that I realized how different my response is to it now. First of all, I don't react. Second of all, like, because a response is very different than a reaction. A reaction is very, like, without thought. It's kind of like a knee-jerk, like a reaction. It's not something that you think through. A response is something that is thought through. It's something that that is more grounded than just a reaction. A reaction is something you almost cannot help. A response is something that is more like emotionally mature and with more intelligence behind it. But when this person raised their voice to me, I stayed very calm. And I felt calm. I didn't feel upset. Later, when I calmed, like when he calmed down and like the whole situation calmed down, and I didn't have to verbally set boundaries, I felt like the tension of that situation. And like, I almost wanted to cry. That's how intense that situation was. But that person definitely had the spirit of strife on them, and I know why it was attacking me through this person, because that's something I used to deal with a lot, was the spirit of strife in my family, in myself, and it was very difficult, very difficult. And it took years for the Lord to teach me how to reprogram myself. A lot of the programming that we have, which, like, I would call programming from it's the knowledge of good and evil programming system is what it is. Because when you're still operating in a dualistic way of thinking, you're more than likely going to still be on that program, in the matrix of, and I mean like the matrix of deception is the knowledge of good and evil programming system. That is like a basic kind of default confirmation, default human programming. And it isn't until we ascend with Christ, that we're walking with Christ in our Christic nature, called to be conformed to the image of God's Son, Jesus Christ, that we begin to reprogram that within ourselves and walk in our true bright nature. It's okay to still have some of those responses. However, we have to turn to the Lord with them. There is literally no other entity. There is no other salvation. There is no other way to receive peace and healing except through the Lord Jesus Christ. Like, I've looked. Personally, I've looked. I tried, just doing physical exercise and, or meditation and all these different kinds of things that were good, good for me, but they were not the whole answer. You need the whole answer. Like, we all need the whole answer to become whole and holy with the Lord again. The Lord really wants us to remember our bright nature and really wants us to understand the power and authority that he gives us to trample on death, hell, sin. Like, we have the authority to call these things out and stand over them in power and victory, for we are more than conquerors through Christ who loves us. Like, we don't have to deal with these things. I mean, I hear people saying, even Christian people, especially Christian people, which trips me out, but they'll say things like, oh, I have ADHD. I'm like, no, you don't, though. No, you don't. Like, I mean, I know you may have been diagnosed with it, and these are symptoms that you may have experienced your whole life, etc., etc. However, when I had anxiety, I used to say, yeah, I have anxiety. I didn't realize that I was operating under the demonic dominion of another entity that wanted me to believe that that was mine. And the more you claim it, more I claimed it with my words, saying, oh, I have depression, or I have anxiety, or I have ADHD, or I have this or that or the other thing. The more I was literally claiming that demonic attachment. I know it's a hard thing to accept. It was hard for me too. And I still catch myself using my words in a particular way that is not exactly Christ-like. Our words have so much power behind them. So much. I mean, God created everything. Everything and everywhere and in every when with his voice. And we're created in his image. How powerful are our words? Especially when we claim things for others, you will say, oh, well, that person's this or that or the other thing. Especially if it's something that's not positive, it's something that person needs healing from. I mean, look, my one and only friend has, his body is, and like, this is where I get tangled up, because I know that his body has cancer. I know that it does. And at the same time, I have to claim healing for him. Even if he can't claim it for himself right now, I have to claim that. He is healing from cancer. He is getting better and stronger from the things that have been ravaging his body for so long. If we can't claim it for each other, for ourselves, we have to start claiming it for each other. Because sometimes I don't like